saying that, I heard the other day that the soul is free. Once somebody dies, it just floats around like a ghost and just visits people and spooks people and scares people, Allahu A'lam. Or we hear ideas. I heard the other day someone was telling me, a Muslim sister told me that Jannah and Jahannam is metaphorical. There is no real Jannah, there is no real Jahannam, there is no real fire. That Jannah and Jahannam means that if you did good in this life and people remember you after you die with good, that's your Jannah. And if you do bad and people remember you for the evil that you did, that's your Jahannam. That's it. So these are ideas that people are throwing out there. And it's important as Muslims that we understand what our belief system is. What does Islam, what does the Prophet ﷺ, what does Allah say about these ideas? And what do we find in the Quran? We are a nation of Burhan. We are a people of evidence. So Allah tells us when someone brings a claim, what do we tell them? We say, قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. If you're claiming that the soul is free, then show me, where does Allah say that the soul is free? Show me where the Prophet ﷺ says that the soul is free, and then I'll believe your claim. It's really interesting. In my own culture, in our own Afghan culture, subhanAllah, not to poke fun of anyone for their beliefs, but it's important to think rationally. Some people believe that after, chill or 40 days, that the soul comes back, and we have to cook food for it, and we have to leave a plate of food, and maybe in Arab cultures and whatnot, similar things are there. But these things are completely outside of Islam. These things are, Allah has never said anything about this in the Quran. The Prophet ﷺ has never said anything about this in the Hadith. So it's important that we are looking for that burhan, looking for that proof. So what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about this? Do we deny the journey of the soul after death? Some Muslims nowadays are saying that the soul is just asleep, right? We just sleep, we wait for a short period of time, and then we wake up and it's the akhirah. And then the judgment day begins. But what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have to say about this? My brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that the reward and the punishment, the journey of the soul begins at the throat. It begins at the throat. When the soul is being pulled out of the throat. Allah Azza wa Jalla says in Surah Nazi'at, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَالنَّازِعَاتِ غَرْقًا وَالنَّاشِطَاتِ نَشْطًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by the angels, وَالنَّازِعَاتِ غَرْقًا, who rip the souls of evil people violently. They rip them out. And Allah swears by the next group of angels who carry the souls, who pull the souls of the believers, of the mu'mineen, of the believers gently. This is where it begins. Allah says it starts here. The Prophet ﷺ said that it begins from here, that when the angels, Malikul Maut, is extracting the soul of a believer, it's like pouring water, very fluid, very smooth. But for the disbeliever, for the wicked person, for the evil person, the Prophet ﷺ, I'll give an example, it's like pulling barbed wire through cotton. Pulling barbed wire or thorns through cotton, it rips everything out of it. And that's how the Prophet ﷺ described وَالنَّازِعَاتِ غَرْقًا. And if we look at the Quran, there are multiple references. And in different ways, Allah combats this and teaches us the journey of the soul and when this barzakh begins. That this punishment of the grave, the reward of the grave is haq. This is in our aqidah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Waqi'ah, in the end of Surah Al-Waqi'ah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. فلولا إذا بلغت الحلقوم وأنتم حينئذ تنظرون ونحن أقرب إليه منكم ولكن لا تبصرون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, do you not see when the soul is being extracted, فلولا إذا بلغت الحلقوم, when the soul is at the throat, وَأَنْتُمْ حِينَئِذٍ تَنْظُرُونَ, and you can't do anything, you're just looking. Right? When we have our family members, our loved ones, they're resting on their deathbed. We can't do a single thing. Not one moment can we extend, not one moment can we make it quicker. Allah says, and you're just watching. You can't do a thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He continues, in this very moment when the soul reaches the throat, He says, وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْكُمْ وَلَكِنْ لَا تُبْصِرُونَ, that we are closer to this person, the soul, than you are, but you cannot see it. We know the journey. We know what happens. We know what happens to the soul after it gets pulled out. You don't know. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues in Surah Al-Waqi'ah. A few verses later, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَأَمَّا إِن كَانَ مِنَ الْمُقَرَّبِينَ فَرَوْحٌ وَرَيْحَانٌ وَجَنَّةُ نَعِيمٍ. Allah says, for this person, subhanAllah, if this person was a believer, if this person was from al-muqarrabeen, the people who are close to Allah. What does close to Allah mean? Meaning what? Always remembering Allah, dhikr of Allah, and whatever it is that we're doing, remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If this person was close to Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَرَوْحٌ وَرَيْحَانٌ وَجَنَّةُ نَعِيمٍ. Then rest, ease, the glad tidings of Jannah, gardens will be for this person. This is not talking about the akhirah. This is not talking about after the day of judgment. This is in that moment that that soul is extracted from that person's body. Allah continues and He says, another few verses later, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَمَّا إِن كَانَ مِنَ الْمُكَذِّبِينَ الضَّالِّينَ فَنُزُلٌ مِّنْ حَمِيمٍ وَتَصْلِيَةُ جَحِيمٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and for the opposite now, right? The first one was muqarrabeen, the people who are close to Allah. Right? They have that ease, that rest, that satisfaction. For the opposite, وَأَمَّا إِن كَانَ مِنَ الْمُكَذِّبِينَ الضَّالِينَ, the people who rejected and the people who were misguided. Allah says, for these people, فَنُزُلٌ مِّنْ حَمِيمٍ. And this is a point that we will take a look at, inshallah. فَنُزُلٌ مِّنْ حَمِيمٍ. Allah says, we will give them a taste of boiling water. That boiling water, hamim, the punishment for those who reject Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah uses the word فَنُزُلٌ مِّنْ حَمِيمٍ. Nuzul. And nuzul is like an appetizer. Nuzul is like a before the main course. Allah is saying we give them a taste of this boiling water. Does Allah give this taste of the boiling water at the end, or is this coming before? So this is another sign Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that before the akhirah, there is this barzakh, there is this trial, there is this test that they go through. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in another place in the Quran, in Surah Al-Mu'minun, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَمِن وَرَائِهِمْ بَرْزَخٌ إِلَى يَوْمِ يُبْعَثُونَ. And behind them, Allah says, for the person who has passed away, Allah says, there is a barzakh, there is a barrier behind them. They can't go back. And they're waiting, إِلَى يَوْمِ يُبْعَثُونَ. They're waiting until the day of judgment. So they're not sleeping, they're not disappeared, they're not floating around amongst us. They're waiting, they're going through their journey إِلَى يَوْمِ يُبْعَثُونَ, until the day of judgment. And this idea, my brothers and sisters, it's so extensive. The Prophet ﷺ has explained this so extensively. But there's no room to put that, there's no room to fit that into today's discussion. That just the ayat of the Quran alone will suffice in time. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes this soul, this journey. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who are al-muqarrabeen, those who are close. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us not among those who are al-dhaleen, those who are misguided. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this journey. And it's very important, my brothers and sisters, because this barrier, this phase that the soul goes through is the beginning of our test. The preparation for this is important. If we are neglectful of this, then we are neglecting this entire thing. We are not going to prepare for this time. So it's important to understand that this exists in order to prepare for it. So another ayah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, and these ones I'll go through a little bit quicker, inshallah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Al-An'am, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَوْ تَرَى إِذِ الظَّالِمُونَ فِي غَمَرَاتِ الْمَوْتِ وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ بَاسِطُو أَيْدِيهِمْ أَخْرِجُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ الْيَوْمَ تُجْزَوْنَ عَذَابَ الْهُونِ بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَقُولُونَ عَلَى اللَّهِ غَيْرَ الْحَقِّ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if only, وَلَوْ تَرَى, if only you could see the wrongdoers while they're going through the pangs of death, while that soul is being extracted, if only you could see, Allah is saying, if only you could imagine what they're going through. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that angels will be there. The angels are spreading their arms, they're telling them to release the soul. They're releasing the soul from this body. And the angels are telling them, Al-Yawma tujzawna adab. This day you shall taste the punishment. This day you shall taste the punishment. Not in a few days or in a few moments or in a sa'a later. Al-yawma tujzawna 'adab. That you will taste that punishment now. بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَقُولُونَ عَلَى اللَّهِ غَيْرَ الْحَقِّ. For what you used to say about Allah that was not true. For what you used to associate with Allah. For what you used to claim with Allah. So my brothers and sisters, claiming something that is not in the fold of Islam, that the soul does this or the soul does that, or the qiyamat is like this or the adab is like this. These are things that if we say them without knowing, we will fall under this punishment. That we said things ghayr al-haq, we said things that were not true. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve us from this. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who are knowledgeable in our faith and steadfast in our faith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues, and in this ayah it makes it very clear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it very clear there is a world that we live in. There is a barzakh that we stay in, and there is the akhirah that we will stay in forever. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah At-Tawbah, chapter 9, verse 101, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَمِمَّنْ حَوْلَكُمْ مِنَ الْأَعْرَابِ مُنَافِقُونَ وَمِنْ أَهْلِ الْمَدِينَةِ مَرَدُوا عَلَى النِّفَاقِ لَا تَعْلَمُهُمْ نَحْنُ نَعْلَمُهُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says, سَنُعَذِّبُهُمْ مَرَّتَيْنِ ثُمَّ يُرَدُّونَ إِلَىٰ عَذَابٍ عَظِيمٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, among the Bedouins around you, Allah is talking to Rasulullah. He says, Ya Rasulullah, among the people around you, the tribes around you, the Bedouins around you, there are munafiqun. There are people who are hypocrites. You don't know them, they're hypocrites. And Allah says, وَمِنْ أَهْلِ الْمَدِينَةِ, and people inside your city, there are hypocrites. You don't know them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَا تَعْلَمُهُمْ. You don't know who these people are. نَحْنُ نَعْلَمُهُمْ. We know. We know who those hypocrites are. Those people who are saying one thing, who are pretending to be believers, but on the other side, when they turn their backs, they're the exact opposite. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we know them, and what would we do with them? Allah says that سَنُعَذِّبُهُمْ مَرَّتَيْنِ. We will punish them 2 times. We will punish them 2 times, and then we will punish them in the akhirah. Then we will punish them with the great punishment. So what is this 2 times, my brothers and sisters? Allah is talking about the world that we live in, the dunya that we live in, that Allah will punish the hypocrites now. Allah will punish the hypocrites in the qabr, in the grave, and Allah will punish those hypocrites again for the great punishment of the hellfire. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from these punishments. So my brothers and sisters, it's important to know that this barzakh exists. It's important to know that Jannah and Jahannam is not metaphorical. That this is the journey that we're on, and if we believe in the Kitab of Allah, if we believe in Allah, then this is what our Allah tells us. We can believe whatever we want. Alhamdulillah, we live in a country where we have the First Amendment, freedom of speech. We can say what we want, we can believe what we want. No one is going to torture us, no one is going to kill us, alhamdulillah, for believing what we want. So we can believe whatever we want. But if we believe something other than this, then we cannot call that Islam. I cannot take my Toyota and stick a Mercedes emblem on the front of it and say that I'm driving an S-Class. It doesn't work like that. If we believe in Islam, if we're entering the fold of Islam, we enter fully. We read what Allah says, the Kitab Allah, and we accept what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who are fully committed to His deen. My brothers and sisters, the last point I want to mention is, while we understand this, it's important to prepare. A Bedouin once came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, Mata sa'a ya Rasulullah? When is this day of judgment coming, ya Rasulullah? And the Prophet ﷺ would normally, we have so many ahadith, the Prophet ﷺ says what? He says, Allahu A'lam, or he gives him some sign, or he tells him some foreshadowing event. But in this case, the Prophet ﷺ responds with a question of his own. He says, what have you prepared? You're asking about Yawm al-Qiyamah, you're asking about the Sa'ah, you're worried about the time, but what have you prepared for that time? That's more important than understanding what time it is. Just like our sister who passed away, just like so many of our other relatives, loved ones, family members who have passed away, the shock will not be when Qiyamah comes, the shock will be when we pass away and we don't realize that what's going to happen. We're not understanding, we're not comprehending that our life will end very soon. We're completely in our own cause. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve us from this. So this Bedouin asked the Prophet ﷺ this, and the Prophet ﷺ responded and said, what have you prepared? So giving direction to this individual that it's important to prepare for Yawm al-Qiyamah. The number one thing, my brothers and sisters, that we can do, we mentioned that this whole topic is a topic of Aqidah. It's a topic of creed, our beliefs. The number one thing is read Kitabullah. The number one advice for myself, first before anyone else, is to read Kitabullah, read the Book of Allah. And these ideas, these topics are all discussed in here. And if we read these things, our Aqidah will be bolstered, inshallah. Our Aqidah will be the same Aqidah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The next thing that we can do, my brothers and sisters, is study more and understand what this journey entails. Prepare ourselves. In child development, there's a theory that children are motivated by two things, either fear or reward, punishment or reward. And it's true that this is for children, but subhanAllah, this extends to the oldest individual that we know. That you are motivated by fear or by reward. That we have to understand, what is that motivates us? If I'm a person that's motivated by reward, then I'll look at the Quran and I'll read the ayat of Jannah. I'll read the ayat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about maghfirah, forgiveness. If I'm a person that's motivated by punishment, right, by avoiding punishment, that I don't want to have that in my life or in the akhirah, then I'll read about these things. I'll study the Book of Allah. I'll read about the punishments of the grave, the narrowing of the grave, where Rasulullah says that your chest, for those wicked, evil people, the Prophet ﷺ says that the grave will narrow, and to the point where their rib cages will be rubbing against each other, subhanAllah. May Allah save us from this punishment. And it's unfortunate, but we don't like to remember this. We don't like to remember the punishments. We don't like to remember the difficult things because they're uncomfortable. But like the Prophet ﷺ said, remembering death is uncomfortable, but it's something that is very beneficial for us. Similarly, we should remember these punishments, and it should help to motivate us in order to become better and better and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among His muqarrabeen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who receive their book in their right hand. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those people that the malaika take the souls gently from. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make our souls rest in Aliyeen and allow us to be with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the highest level of Jannah. Ameen. Allahumma ameen. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا محمدا عبده ورسوله بشيرا ونذيرا داعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتاب مبين بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. My dear respected brothers and sisters, this punishment of the grave, this trial and this tribulation will come. And glad tidings are to those who are prepared for it. And alhamdulillah, all of us have the opportunity to prepare. We're all breathing, we're all here, we're all listening, we all can see. Alhamdulillah, Allah has given us these blessings, so we have time to prepare for them. The Prophet ﷺ describes what happens to this individual once they're put into the grave. It's the most daunting, most traumatizing, scariest time is that first night in the grave. When that soul is extracted, the Prophet ﷺ describes that the soul will come back. And inside the grave, the angels will begin their questioning. How they will ask, what they will ask in exact form, Allahu A'lam, Allah knows best. But the Prophet ﷺ has given us a general directive on what happens. That these angels will come and they will ask us questions. They will ask us, Man Rabbuka, Man Dinuka, wa Man Nabiyuka. They will ask us, who is your Lord? Who is your Nabi, and what religion are you following? These are the three questions that we will all be asked. Ever since we were young, we learned this. We learned this since we were young. But the important thing, my brothers and sisters, is that the answer to these questions is not as easy as it seems. that if you ask anyone, you can very easily answer this. Man rabbuka Allah, man nabiyuka Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wa man dinuka Islam. That it's very easy to say these things while we're alive, but it's how we die, the state of our soul when we pass away. Are we doing something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with? Or are we doing something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is displeased with? These are the two conditions when we die that will determine how we answer these questions. The believer will be asked, and the believer will answer. And another individual will be asked, and this individual will say, I've heard of these questions before. These questions are familiar. I know what the answer to these are, but it's not coming out of his mouth. Man rabbuka, the question of who is your Lord, I know this. I've heard people talk about this. I've heard people recite this, but I can't say it. And that becomes the moment where this individual is destined for that punishment in the grave and the punishment in the hereafter. So long as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy does not take him out of that. So this is the moment where it begins. That grave will become either either it will become a garden in Riyadh al-Jannah from one of the gardens of paradise, or it will become a small pit from the pits of hellfire. And so this is very, very important. The Prophet ﷺ mentions that individual who did not have Allah on his tongue, did not have the Quran on his tongue, he will not be able to answer those questions. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who have our tongues wet with the dhikr of Allah, with the remembrance of Allah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who prepare for this next life, who prepare for the akhirah, and who prepare to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those that Allah mentions in Surah Al-Fajr. He says, Irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiya. O ayyuha nafs al-mutma'inna. O soul that is at peace, come back to your Lord. Your Lord is pleased with you, and you are pleased with your Lord. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who are pleased with Allah, and Allah is pleased with us. Allahumma rabbana atina fi dunya hasana, wa fil akhirati hasana, wa qina adhab an-nar, wa adkhilna jannata ma'a al-abrar, ya aziz ya ghaffar ya rabbal alameen. Allahumma ighfir li hayyina wa mayyitina, wa shahidina wa ghaibina, wa saghirina wa kabirina, wa dhakarina wa unthana. Allahumma man ahyaytahu minna fahyi ala al-islam, wa man tawaffaytahu minna fatawaffahu ala الإيمان. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, forgive us for our shortcomings. Expiate from us our evil deeds. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, forgive the sins and shortcomings of our sister who has passed away. Forgive the sins and shortcomings of all of our deceased who have passed away. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give a speedy recovery for all of our Muslim brothers and sisters who are sick. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, make their sickness a means for their entrance into Jannah and a means for their sins to be forgiven. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bring peace and stability to the Muslim lands and non-Muslim lands. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give your help to the Muslims that are suffering all over the world, in Afghanistan, in Palestine, in Iraq, in Syria, in Burma, in China, anywhere in the world that our Muslim brothers and sisters are suffering. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bring them ease. Make their suffering a means for the expiation of their sins. Make their suffering a way for them to get to Jannah, to have face in front of you, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فاذكروني أذكركم واشكروا لي ولا تكفرون ولذكر الله تعالى أكبر وأقم الصلاة. جزاك الله.